Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel and more bolt action faction reviews here as we take a look at another one of the minor nations. Today we're going into Romania. A couple of cool special rules to start things off, and then a decent selection of units as well. So definitely a fun faction to get into. And if you have some German forces already, you can kind of overlap a little bit on some of the units, although they have some unique things here too. But let's get in here. Access support. So a Romanian force may include a single unit from either the German or Italian army lists, though no German or Italian army special rules apply, except for Hitler's buzzsaw, because that's a gear or equipment special rule. This unit must be included as part of a platoon, taking the slot of the equivalent unit type, so sniper for sniper, tank for tank, and so on and so forth. So all that stuff pretty much makes sense, right? Can't be the platoon's mandatory units, though, right? And then in addition, the unit may not be a veteran unit, nor a vehicle with a damage value of 10 or higher, so it limits it a little bit, but that still gives us some cool choices from those army lists that we otherwise wouldn't have access to. In a lot of cases, we'll probably opt for something like a decent German tank or something like that. So now we marry that special rule, right, where we can include German or Italians with French artillery doctrine. So like many armies of Europe, the Romanians modeled their armed forces on many French concepts. French artillery doctrine called for artillery to be deployed close to the front line where it could react quickly to an enemy's actions. A Romanian forward artillery observer unit may call an barrage, or an artillery barrage, twice instead of once per game. We've seen that with some of the other factions we've looked at, so just getting this is pretty cool and really lets us get more mileage out of the forward artillery observer. So you do the first barrage as normal, then after the first one has been resolved, you can call a second one when issued a fire order. So kind of almost makes that an auto include in the list. As far as infantry units, right, we get the usual HQ selections here, the officers with the different veterancy levels, so we can have everything up through veteran, the accompanying guards as well, if we want that. So, and pistol, SMG, rifle are the options as depicted on the models. The medic choice as well. Here, interestingly, like unlike some of the other factions where there is a little bit of veterancy to the medics or different levels, here it's just you're buying a veteran medic for 30 points, and that's what it's going to be. And again, could also have two men accompanying, but no weapons for them either, for any of them. But again, the forward observer is really going to be, I think, the auto include 75 regular, 90 vet, with up to the 2 extra men as well. Pistol, SMG, or rifle as is normal here. And then the infiltrator rule, but again, also getting the French artillery doctrine for us as well. Then moving on, our standard infantry squad for the Romanians is pretty solid. We can go regular or veteran. There are no inexperienced for these guys, starting off with the typical 5 men as well. And interestingly here, the NCO is already going to come with the SMG. We're not have to pay extra for that. Rifles for the regular men. And then interestingly here, we can have some pretty large squad sizes with adding up to 9 additional men, giving us, 5 and 9, so a 14-man squad, potentially 10 for regular, 13 for vets. So we can have some interestingly large units with some pretty solid weight of fire here. Up to 2 men can have an LMG, with 1 becoming the loader, so pretty standard stuff there for 15 points. The NCO could go with a rifle and actually get a 4-point discount if you just want to go like all long-range support with them and don't really plan on getting close. Nice that it's a discount too. One guy could have a Panzerfaust if you do want the squad to have a little bit of AT capability, but in that case you're going to be needing to get close, so you might then just want to leave the NCO with the SMG, in case you do need to deal with some nearby infantry and have that couple extra dice of shooting. Could also go with AT grenades for the whole squad, although obviously if you're running like the max size, that gets pretty expensive, right? And then also the entire squad may be given the engineer's rule for +1 point per man. So like some of the other minor nations we've seen, you don't get too many choices. You don't have all these different like dedicated infantry units with all like different names and different purposes and stuff like that. So your one squad really kind of becomes like a sort of a multi-use squad. You can go with different squad sizes up to pretty almost like not quite a horde concept there, but multiple like 14-man squads would actually be putting quite a few bodies on the board. You can get AT capability in a couple different ways. You can have engineers, so whatever you want. And I mean, you could, I guess, opt for every upgrade and have some pretty damn expensive units. that can kind of do a lot of different things. Obviously, you're going to probably have fewer bodies overall on the board then, but you could also just have some smaller specialized squads as well. But everything is basically here for you in one squad. So would have been interesting to see something like maybe, if we went to like the max squad size, that we could have added like a second LMG or something. That'd be pretty wicked. But nonetheless, the squad can do just about everything that we needed to for our bog standard infantry squad. Moving on to some of the other teams that we get. So interestingly enough, they have a cavalry section here, and they come with those cavalry carbines. Again, actually 1 NCO and 5 men on horses. So we're starting off with 6 in the squad there. Can have 7 more guys. Again, regular or vet options. In here, even one guy can have the Panzerfaust, so kind of a mobile Panzerfaust delivery system here is probably a neat little tactic that you could spring on somebody. Now, these guys weren't trained to change, or were not trained to charge into battle, more of a mobile reserve or pursuit unit, so they may not move into contact with an enemy unit while mounted. On the other hand, cavalry sections don't suffer the -1 to their leadership roll to arrive from reserve as a trade-off there. And the carbines, right, short-barreled rifles, so basically pistols on horseback and rifles on foot. So a neat little option that gives you some mobility without necessarily having to invest in a vehicle, which in some cases would be a little bit more vulnerable, but lets you get to different places on the battlefield pretty quickly and have a little bit of flexibility as well. Mortar options, we actually get our first sort of look at potentially inexperienced troops all the way up through veteran. It's the light mortar, but we have the path to actually upgrade to medium and heavy. And interestingly, the light mortar may reduce the crew to 2 for a discount. So that's a thing to maybe consider, right? If we wanted something just like absolutely dirt cheap, maybe an inexperienced one for 19 points, and just kind of occasionally getting some decent pot shots in there. But the mediums and heavies can add the spotter, and just with the somewhat lack of choices compared to one of the major nations, the fact that you can here actually bring a heavy mortar for these guys is still pretty cool, and get some solid template action out there to drop some squads and things like that. So pretty cool stuff there. And honestly, even for the heavy mortar upgrade, still actually running fairly cheap here. You probably do want to add the spotter, of course, but even then, that's a pretty cool option that they have that. They have the standard MG team, basically, so a medium machine gun. And here, considered a German machine gun, so you actually get 1 extra shot when firing the MMG. Inexperienced up through vet, so good stuff there. The Panzerschreck team, so having another one of those. And again, all the standard stuff there, although fairly pricey, right? You see the points jump when we go from inexperienced to these guys to regular to vets. 104 points is a chunk of points, though. So, but it gives us yet another AT option without having to invest in a vehicle necessarily. Sniper teams, standard stuff there. Regular and vet options. Obviously, it makes sense not to have inexperienced snipers. All the usual bells and whistles for them. Unlike some of the other nations that we've seen recently, though, these guys do get the flamethrower team, so some of the goodies there. So all the specialist types, basically, here, and regular and vet for these guys as well. So now we're leaving the infantry, and here we're gonna kind of see then where the list kind of starts drying up a little bit as far as tons of choices. So as far as infantry goes, you can build a very solid force out of all that stuff there. Now, noticeably absent was like any kind of like dedicated AT team there, but we come back to that and actually have that in the artillery section. So we start with the field artillery, the howitzers. Again, starting off with the light, we can upgrade to medium and heavy, so we really can bring quite a bit of dedicated indirect fire to the list and have lots of template action, so we can definitely wreck enemy infantry and even do some work on vehicles with that stuff. The AT gun we get here is actually interesting path on that. Starts off with a light, as you might expect, and also inexperienced through vets. We can pay 20 points, which is still very reasonable depending on what our purposes and needs are and what we kind of want to fill out for the list. If we're running some Fausts and Shreks and stuff, adding a team like this and putting it in an optimal spot. The medium can definitely do a lot of work if you're looking to keep the points cheap still. But if we wanted to really invest and have some serious hitting power, we could go for the heavy. You gain an extra man on the crew as well, so a 4-man crew. You can also get a gun shield, but that'll take us to at least 95 points regular and a little bit more for the vets. But having that heavy, again, in the absence of maybe investing in a bunch of vehicles and just kind of keeping the force infantry based, is still a viable option. Saves some points, although at the cost of mobility, right? Doesn't necessarily specify what the gun would be, but realistically could use like the different like German pack guns, I think would be fair in the absence of any like specific Romanian models. Anti-air, we get a little bit of that too, basically a light autocannon, which we could actually upgrade to a heavy autocannon. Very, very cheap on points to start with. Just going regular 40 points, not bad at all. Has a gun shield already in place. And realistically, the light AT gun, or not light AT, but light auto cannon can do enough work to deal with potential flyers, but we'll also do a number on exposed infantry. The heavy, it's not that expensive, but we don't necessarily need to go that route. All right, guys, coming to the end of the list here, and here's where it gets pretty meager. That's where our Army Special Rule will come into place, having access to the Italian and German units. So our tank here is the Renault R35. You have inexperienced up through vet. Again, it's not really an all-star as far as a vehicle goes, hence the cheapness on the points. But we are getting a turret-mounted low-velocity light AT gun with a coax MMG. It's considered a light tank. The one-man turret, so it's got all kinds of disadvantages, right? It's one-man turret, slow. Does have armored all around those, pretty cool. And then the low-velocity gun, right? Counts as a light AT gun, but only has an armor pen of +3 instead of +4. So we're going to be looking for flank shots and stuff like that to make up for that against vehicles. So nothing spectacular there, but we can make up for that with, again, maybe opting in for a nice solid AT gun or two here, and just making smart use of like Panzerfaust and Shreks and stuff like that to give the enemy many potential threats and vectors for those threats to deal with. And then finally, an interesting little option down here. Oh, also, just real quick, transports and tows, common vehicles, so easy enough there. The Takam Tank Destroyer. So again, inexperienced up through vet, and same points cost, interestingly enough, as the Renault. Armor-wise, we're going a little bit lower, so it's technically an armored car, but it is giving us a hull-mounted medium AT gun, which gives us the flexibility of movement. It is a vehicle. Obviously, paper for armor, more or less, so we're going to have to be super careful if we take these on where we deploy them. Realistically, what can shoot us back from the enemy, what can cause us harm, what are we going to be exposed to. It also has an open top to deal with on top of that, right? So if the enemy does have the capability of putting mortars and stuff on you, indirect fire, etc., it's going to be pretty rough. No MG or anything for that, no option for like a Pintle MG, so we're just having that gun, and it's hull mounted, right? So now interestingly, it doesn't specify like what the specific angle is. Sometimes the vehicles will say it's got like a 90-degree front arc, things like that, but with it not being a turret, right, we're going to have to reposition the tank quite a bit, so smart deployment at the outset is going to be key for that. But again, we can lock certain areas down, hopefully deal with an enemy should it wander into our sights, and then maybe reposition and stay out of trouble, and hopefully just again keep dealing with the enemy. And ideally, we're having enough other threats in other parts of the list to keep the opponent occupied so that they won't necessarily focus on this, because it is one of our own like native options here that can actually do some solid work as a vehicle. But as we mentioned, taking advantage of the Army rule, right, we're just kind of going backwards here to the Axis support special rule. So we can take German and Italian things, ideally, probably more often like a German thing, a German vehicle. Can't be damage value 10 or higher, so we're not getting the big cats for the Germans, but something, depending on what period of the war we're wanting to play and what we maybe expect. If we're just playing a fun game, you can take whatever, but if we're trying to think somewhat more competitively on this, we might want something a little more substantive from the Germans, so maybe something like a late Panzer III or like a good solid Panzer IV, just different things like that. It's all really what you like and what you think is cool, but also somewhat what you want to make work for the list based on the points you have. But that is really where you can get a sort of good all-around vehicle that can do everything, and then kind of pair that with what you get specifically with this list. So yeah, we got the forward observer. The French artillery rule is pretty cool too. We get a very good selection of infantry units and teams and stuff like that. Artillery is pretty on point as well. We're let down by our own native vehicles, but we do make up for it with the Axis support option. So all in all, a pretty cool faction to try out. Let us know, guys, if you play Romania, how you focus your build. What do you think is best here in version 3.0? For those guys, hit us up in the comments. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll have more for you soon.